It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Engineering winter weather whiplash, at least for a few selected locations, just in time for the holiday. And if you don't believe the technology exists to engineer winter weather on a vast scale, search Chinese scientists engineer snowstorm. You'll find all major media covered the massive Chinese climate engineering operations that have and continue to wreak havoc on major cities, including Beijing. CNN, The Guardian, MSNBC, Popular Mechanics, many more, all fully acknowledging what Chinese climate engineering operations were doing then, in this particular case, all the way back in 2008. Certainly they're continuing now, same as they have been here in the U.S. Yet when these same operations are carried out in the U.S. with a military machine that's far larger than the Chinese military, and with the U.S. military jet tanker fleet that has 3 times more jet tankers than all the rest of the world's militaries combined, matrix media and far too many in programmed populations start ranting their favorite mantra, just a conspiracy theory, they say. Though that's starting to die down as people wake up and look up. And about the conspiracy theory term of psychological self-defense, that's the term that's the final fallback for the factless and the fearful. Yes, welcome to engineered winter weather whiplash, the jet stream manipulated and chemically nucleated kind. On that note from CNN, big temperature drop and snow on the menu this Thanksgiving for millions across the U.S. That's the type of sensational headlines that the climate engineers and the controllers absolutely relish. From that report, a blast of Arctic cold air is set to sweep across the country just as family and friends take to the roads and skies to gather for Thanksgiving. Timing here is everything because people are much more inclined to remember that inclement weather due to the travel difficulties they encountered. There's more. From Newsweek, this new headline, map shows states getting hit with, quote, major sudden weather phenomenon. Nobody questions anything anymore. The weather's nothing like it was historically, but the changes have come on slowly over a couple decades, becoming far worse, and so few take notice of anything. From AccuWeather, this widespread lake effect snow event to create dangerous travel whiteouts near Great Lakes. From that report, the most widespread lake effect snow event so far this season will cause major disruptions around Thanksgiving. Again, timing with the holiday. Winds will howl, temperatures will drop, and the flakes will fly. The very strangely shaped flakes, by the way, often look like giant cotton balls or other types of grapple, looks like rice grains. There's all sorts of different shapes and sizes that go with chemically nucleated frozen material, but nothing like naturally nucleated snow. They say the flakes will fly and pile up around the Great Lakes from Wednesday to Friday, again, right over the holiday being the center of that, with impacts ranging from snow-clogged roads and travel disruptions to downed trees and power outages. From the AccuWeather script reading meteorologists. That's what they are. They're reading scripts that are actually passed down ultimately from Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, 2 private defense contractors that are neck deep in climate engineering everything. They provide the weather modeling for the National Weather Service and NOAA, the nation's weathermen. Why would private defense contractors need to do that? Why would there be an illegal federal gag order on all agency operations for National Weather Service and NOAA? Again, how many red flags do we need to know this is going on? And yet most don't want to know. That's why they don't acknowledge this. From AccuWeather, another headline, same theme, Thanksgiving U.S. travel, storms, blizzard, and fog to disrupt millions. That freezing fog, how many people are familiar with that now? As they chemically nucleate, dries up much of the moisture, but you get this endless, constant, freezing, drizzly conditions that are historically completely unnatural. From that AccuWeather report, widespread travel delays will mount across the United States in the days leading up to Thanksgiving. Not in some areas. Here in the West, it's very warm again, extremely dry again, in spite of the fact that they say we're no longer under drought conditions. You don't erase, literally in my location, an absence of hundreds of inches of rain over the last 15 plus years, it doesn't just go away. They say the severe storms, thick fog, and flooding rain, and even blizzards in the forecast across the country against select locations, most especially around the Great Lakes, the record warm Great Lakes, where atmospheric pressure zone manipulation creates extremely strong zonal surface winds, straight line surface winds that picks up moisture from across those lakes. It's chemically nucleated, and they dump it in specific locations, and they sensationalize the headlines. Lots of pictures of the snow, when in other parts of the country conditions are completely different. Other parts of the world, even more so. Other parts of the world that don't have the biggest military in the world to constantly weather warfare them. The AccuWeather report also says everything from severe thunderstorms to flooding rain and fog and a blizzard will create travel disruptions for millions of people across the United States in the days leading up to Thanksgiving and through Thanksgiving. And we have, of course, constant thunder snow now. Since when did we have that? We even had a thundernado they announced 2 weeks ago. They're chemically nucleating cloud moisture. That's what's causing all the freezing precipitation in conditions that whiplash with temperatures going up and down 30, 40 degrees in a single day. None of this is nature. AccuWeather report then says a range of severe threats, including damaging winds, hail, and flash flooding, and a few tornadoes. Only a small amount of snow may fall, they say, but it will be just enough to make the roads slippery at night. And the roads are especially slippery when we consider the surfactants that are a part of the climate engineering dispersions. Surfactants are what makes soap soap. So do we have the equivalent of soap-soaked snow? No wonder the roads are so incredibly slippery, and people who thought they knew how to drive on frozen roads now don't. AccuWeather then says, while the storm originating from the southern states, because that makes so much sense, right? Winter storms coming from the south, may lose intensity as it reaches the northeast, it will still pose a challenge for some travelers due to gusty thunderstorms, rain-slicked highways, and fog. Lots and lots of fog. When you conduct chemical ice nucleating operations over regions that have been warmer and the ground is still retaining some of that heat, the fog is certainly an expected result. AccuWeather then states, across the northern tier of central states, an area of snow will evolve into more of a snowstorm, and then later blizzard conditions in some areas. Emphasis on the some areas. When we look at the Great Lakes lake effect snow over the, again, record warm Great Lakes piled up in a few selected areas only on the downwind side of the lakes. This is not nature, not natural, not historically precedented to be over and over. This is their focus region now where they can create the sensationalized headlines they need to convince the rest of the country that's been subjected to on and off record warmth that everything's fine somewhere. Another from AccuWeather, historic Thanksgiving travel surge collides with coast-to-coast storm. Nothing happening here in Northern California, I can tell you that. It feels like maybe September. Though many of the deciduous trees look hideous, they look increasingly so every fall. We know that there's synthesized chemical defoliants in some of the fall rains. We've confirmed that with testing with UC Minnesota. These are elements used to force trees into dormancy, and it has a profound effect on the leaves, which look completely unnatural. We have trees that are half foliated with stone-dead leaves, live leaves on the other half of the tree. We have some trees that have been hit with a larger dose, perhaps, that are fully foliated with dead leaves that will hang there until the wind blows them off. This is not the abscission hormone that would cause the leaves to naturally fall with a change of seasons and a change of temperatures. Trees are also losing their tensile strength, which means branches start to droop, the crowns start to become misshapen. The intense UV radiation is a part of that factor. The toxins in the rain that affect the root systems are part of that factor. People that don't recognize how much the trees are suffering are not paying attention, and our forests are tanking, completely tanking. Not opinion, not theory, not hypothesis. A recent study of Doug fir trees in all of Western North America used the term furpocalypse. I think that's self-explanatory. Some regions with 80% mortality, and people are going about their lives as if nothing's wrong. Here's a reminder of what happened immediately after the last chemical cool down in the U.S. only a few weeks ago. Record-breaking heat is on the way following a cold blast. That was Fox News. And here's another former headline. Again, this is before the now ongoing latest chemical cool down in the U.S. Weather whiplash, above average temperatures expected for 200 plus million Americans after early week polar plunge. Roller coaster weather conditions and temperatures. Welcome to climate engineering. About the ongoing 80-year-long, always expanding climate engineering operations that so often make our skies look like a scene from an otherworldly science fiction movie, Matrix Media wants to keep pretending that we aren't seeing what we're seeing and that it's just a proposal that could, may, might happen someday. From theatlantic.com, who's ready to think about blocking out the sun? Question mark. From that report, the idea of artificially lowering the planet's temperature is gaining supporters and hitting political opposition. In a study published in the journal Frontiers in Science, more than 40 experts in climate change, polar geosciences, and ocean patterns warned that geoengineering was extremely unlikely to work and likely to have dangerous consequences on top of that. They continue, spraying reflective aerosols into the atmosphere to deflect the sun's heat could, may, might, for instance, cause stratospheric heating, which may alter atmospheric circulation patterns. How long, over how many years have I gone over exactly all of this? And all these scientists pretending it could, may, might happen someday. It's been ongoing, accelerating, and worsening for 8 decades. The climate engineers have long since had the ability to alter atmospheric pressure zones, which alters upper-level wind currents, which alters moisture trajectories, and they can chemically nucleate that and dump it wherever they want. The atmosphere is a giant physics lab at this point, and it's increasingly becoming a battlefield as tensions, geopolitical tensions all over the world accelerate. How long are we expected to survive like this when the insects can't survive, the animals can't survive, the fish can't survive, the forest can't survive? It's a very naive notion to think that we will survive. From theweek.com, can for-profit geoengineering put a pause on climate change? Question mark. Yeah, how's that working out so far after 80 years? It's a weapon. It's a covert weapon of war by the controllers, the weapon with which they can and have been and continue to bring populations to their knees without those populations ever even knowing they're under assault. This particular article mentions Stardust Solutions that, quote, wants to dim the sun. Scientists are worried, and that's by Joel Mathis, again, from week.com. Authors like this apparently do no research, or they're living in a dark place somewhere, and they refuse to acknowledge the climate engineering elephant in the sky. The report states the idea of using planes to geoengineer the climate by spreading sunlight-reflecting aerosols throughout the Earth's atmosphere is controversial. It is also becoming closer to reality. Closer to reality? How about an ongoing 80-year reality? We truly, I can never grasp this completely, what an orbiting asylum we live in, when the vast majority, even in academia, especially in academia, continue to pretend that we're not seeing what we're seeing in our skies. It's mind-numbing. I have to remind myself every single day that it's not a nightmare, it's reality. They then say in this report, Joel Mathis, the plan comes with likely trade-offs with possible side effects, including shifts in regional weather patterns that people depend on for crops. Joel, how about we all get to breathe what they're spraying? It's contaminating virtually everything, and that is never, ever mentioned in any of these geoengineering could, may, might happen someday articles. Never mentioned. Tens of millions of tons of toxic nanoparticles, aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, surfactants, polymer fibers, graphene, all settling down through the air column, literally infiltrating everything, and lots of science data is surfacing on that now, isn't it? Especially with the polymer microfibers and nanofibers showing up in every single human organ, especially the brain, along with the aluminum that we know is already there, and mercury. It's a wonder any of us can walk and talk. The report says there are concerns that technology could, may, might cause acid rain and bring on asthma attacks and damage the ozone layer. Have all of those things now, don't we? How many mainstream media commercials? Every other one seems to be something to do with a breathing problem, and I wonder why. These highly inflammatory nanoparticles being inhaled by every single one of us, and the breathing problems are going through the roof. Why wouldn't they be? They say geoengineering could proceed and America could end up watching from the sidelines. Watching from the sidelines? Really, Joel? America is by far the largest weather warfare participant on the planet. Again, 3 times more atmospheric tankers than all the other militaries in the world combined. From stream.org, This from this week, Playing God with the Weather, Geoengineering and Weather Modification. From that report, geoengineering, of course, the report says, always promises to solve the problem at hand, but then its unforeseen consequences may come back to wreak havoc. You think? They continue. In the 70s, we were concerned about global cooling, so it was proposed to put back black soot over large areas of the Arctic to enhance warming. Imagine where we would be now if that project had been undertaken. Let me stop there for a moment. About the narrative that constantly comes up about the 70s and some of the scientists that didn't know why the warming had continued. They deployed climate engineering immediately after World War II when temperatures were going straight up. And whether it was statistical falsification or an initial profound effect before the negative consequences had kicked in, temperatures leveled off until the mid-70s, but then the negative consequences definitely kicked in. The warming began to accelerate straight up. And so we have this period that's constantly brought up as if it's some sort of proof that the planet wasn't warming during that time. Climate engineering has been a part of this equation the whole time. There's no legitimate discussion about climate anything from any perspective without first and foremost addressing climate engineering that's been an ongoing planetary Manhattan project for 80 years without our knowledge or consent, an experiment from which there is no return. On that note of holiday good cheer, this is Dane Wigington. You're listening to the weekly installment of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Report, the end of the world as we know it broadcast, brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org. How many people would say that that's just alarmism? That there's nothing to worry about, everything will always be fine. When do we become alarmed? We've lost 80 to 90% of the Earth's insect populations, terrestrial and aquatic, right now. Wildlife populations down 75% in the last 40 years alone from an already depleted population. Global fisheries, the pelagic food fish, down about 90% right now. Plankton in the Atlantic down about 90% right now. Forests dying and burning all over the globe. At what point do we become alarmed? And we have skies being sprayed out constantly. I mean, virtually horrific-looking skies, dirty, filthy canopy cover of spreading, lingering, geoengineering, jet-sprayed aerosols. At what point do we become alarmed? If not now, when? Geoengineeringwatch.org is the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of global climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare. Quick footnote for those that truly want to help sound the alarm. Very effective climate engineering awareness-raising materials are available on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Full color printed materials, which we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. We also have Geoengineering Watch shirts. We have restock sizes and colors. That's good conversation starters all the way around there. That's how you get your foot in the door on this issue. From geoengineeringmonitor.org, that's definitely not us. That is the climate science community trying to push total moronicism. Here's the headline: Geoengineering from Space, the Final Frontier for Planetary Scale Climate Manipulations? Question mark. Here's some of their suggestions. Removing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere using a space elevator? What? Is this a sci-fi movie script? Next, using giant airships to unfurl a sunshade. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Let's add this: reducing incoming sunlight using lunar dust. Suggestions from USA scientists, it says here, because nobody wonders how it was that we were supposedly driving an EV dune buggy on the moon in the 60s and we can't go back because we, quote, lost the technology, according to NASA. Really? We lost it? What about all the film reels of the moon landing? Oh, NASA taped over most of those because they said, and I'm quoting verbatim from their officials, no one was watching them and the film reels are expensive, so we just taped over them. You can't make this up. I mean, we are truly living in a full-blown asylum, and now they're saying we're going to use lunar dust to shade the Earth? Massachusetts Institute of Technology suggested a space shield made of bubbles. Are we going to send astronauts out into space and have them blow bubbles with a little kid's bubble blower mechanism? I don't know where to end. I mean, there's so much of this idiocy that we're neck deep in it and drowning every day. Meanwhile, the obvious climate engineering, jet spraying, aerosols are taking place in our skies every day. But make no mistake, this issue can't be hidden forever. In fact, it is definitely being forced to light. Again, my thanks to Tucker Carlson for his help in doing so. In fact, my exchange with Tucker Carlson between his site and other major platforms that published that exchange, there was something on the order of 40 million views. That's a big wake up. And again, my gratitude to Tucker for his willingness to address this issue. We need more like him to do so. All of us are on the same ship. It's called the Titanic, the planetary Titanic at this point. Ship is definitely going down. There are countless causes. The human race has been incredibly poor stewards of the planet. But the weather warfare aspect, the intentional intervention in the planet's life support systems with highly toxic elements and frequency transmissions, that is the final nails in our collective coffins if it's allowed to continue. So after centuries of anthropogenic damage to the planet, with, again, 80 years of expanding and accelerating climate engineering, weather warfare operations on top of that, how's our host planet doing at the moment? Not so well. From the American Geophysical Union 2025 State of the Climate Report, our planet's vital signs are crashing. Yes, they are. From that report, a yearly analysis of climate change's progress and effects, again, climate engineering, a part of this that they don't mention, shows a planet on the brink of ecological breakdown. No, it's not on the brink. It's in free fall. We are through the guardrail and widespread crises, and suggest that only rapid climate mitigation can avoid the worst consequences. Really? Are they suggesting climate engineering? Because that's not working out so well, is it? They say the 6th annual report published in Bioscience analyzes global data on Earth's atmosphere, oceans, energy and ecosystems, food systems, and more. Researchers identified our planet's so-called vital signs, including ocean temperature, surface temperature, sea ice, and carbon pollution. Of the 34 vital signs, 22 were at record levels, indicating a highly stressed Earth system. That's not true either. Everything is past the breaking point at this juncture in time. It's like the human race again, the occupants of a car parked on the railroad tracks, trying to decide what station to put the radio on, and the train is seconds from obliterating them, and they're completely clueless. It's mind-numbing. You go into a Costco or Walmart and watch people filling their carts with holiday Twinkies to watch the game, clueless of how limited their future now is, and how I can't even imagine what's coming. And I do this every single day. I cannot imagine the totality of what's unfolding. Mad Max times 8.3 billion. This makes the worst, most horrific post-apocalyptic movie look like a Carnival cruise to the Caribbean. More bad news. This is an ongoing worsening story on the insects. Geoengineeringwatch.org, the first major source online to report the insect crash about 12 or 13 years ago. Now mainstream science having to admit it because they can no longer hide it. New this week from LifeScience.com, a looming insect apocalypse, no, not looming, already happened. Could endanger, could, may, might, global food supplies. Can we stop it before it's too late? Question mark. Answer, no, can't. We're through the guardrail. We're going to the bottom of the canyon. The question is now, who will survive the ride? They say insect populations are in steep decline. That's an understatement, which could, may, might endanger the food supply. But they say there are things we could do to reverse the trend. Yes, there's one major leap we could make in the right direction, and that is to fully expose and halt the climate engineering insanity, the most destructive human activity ever launched by our species, greatest and most immediate threat we collectively face, short of nuclear cataclysm, which is also likely on the near-term menu as well. The power structure bought and paid for science community continues to grossly underreport the severity of what's unfolding. Again, keep that in mind. It's not less than we're being told. It's more. It's worse. And what do the weather terrorists have planned moving forward? More winter weather warfare for industrialized nations. What a surprise. From thewatchersnews.org, polar vortex collapse begins. Colder winter expected in U.S., Canada, and Europe. Again, that's the kind of headlines the controllers and the climate engineers are seeking with everything they're doing in the atmosphere. Short-term, toxic, highly destructive surface cooldowns at the cost of ensuring that none of us will make it through this alive if we stay on this course. From EastIdahoNews.com, a polar vortex disruption is on the way, and its magnitude is almost unheard of in November. It is unheard of at this scale, at this point. The article says, high above the North Pole and a slice of atmosphere rarely noticed and even less understood, a transformation is underway. Over the next 10 days, changes in the stratosphere will upend weather patterns and set the stage for a cold, snowy December across parts of the Northern Hemisphere. Again, selected locations. They continue, it will mean a dramatic swing in weather for parts of the U.S. that are currently simmering in record heat, and it could begin the week of Thanksgiving. So this is leading up to the event happening now. They continue, it could also be one of the earliest significant polar vortex disruptions recorded since the dawn of the satellite era. There's more. The layer of the atmosphere above where most weather occurs is warming quickly and dramatically in a phenomenon known as a sudden stratospheric warming event. Think ionosphere heater installations. Think HARP in Alaska, for one example. There are many more of these facilities, not just HARP. Scientists are still trying to figure out, the report says, why these warming events happen. Can't figure it out. And for good reason. They can trigger the most intense polar vortex cold air outbreaks in the U.S. This is simply robbing Peter to pay Paul. They're allowing some cold air to spill south. They combine that with moisture from the record warm Gulf of Mexico drifting north, or parts of the Pacific, still record warm moisture. They chemically nucleate that moisture, create a short-term cool down with the winds blowing across the Great Lakes, again, like a giant snowmaking machine. They nucleate that moisture and pile it up in certain locations, create all the headlines they can, and try to feed the normalcy bias in the population until the moment of impact, which draws perilously near if we remain on the current course. Report then says it's still not certain there will be a major winter blast, but scientists are watching for colder than normal conditions to develop in the mid-latitudes, where most of the world's population resides. That's a key statement. They engineer these major surface cool downs over the most populated portions, especially in the U.S., the eastern half of the U.S., lower 48, the most chemically cooled region in the entire planet, off and on in between record warm, over the last 13 years. It's not nature. That's the world's biggest military, keeping the majority of the U.S. population confused and divided as to the true state of damage done to the climate. That's exactly what that's about. And the reason they're not certain ever of what's happening until it happens is because the script is always changing. This is not an exact science. It shouldn't be called climate engineering operations. It's climate disrupting operations, and it's anything but exact and highly destructive. There's more from Yahoo News. Experts issue warning about powerful weather phenomenon that could soon impact the U.S. Then they say this looks like a prolonged event. The report then says the forecast is now calling for the country's roller coaster ride of temperatures, exactly what I've been ranting about for so long, trying to sound the alarm about for so long. They say weather whiplash saw at least 90 cold records fall from November 9th through 12th. Again, this is leading up to what's happening now, followed by at least 40 record highs. Let's stop there because I brought this up many times also. So if you have a given geographic area, if they engineer a surface chemical cool down, they'll take many more record colds than if you have record highs over that area, or even a much bigger area. They'll take far fewer record highs, because then it looks like, well, it was cold more than it was warm, right? No. They're just simply manipulating data. The report then elaborates on the fact that we had this flash freeze chemical cool down, followed by record heat, now followed by more record cold. This isn't nature. Across the pond, more of the same. Chemical winter weather. From the UK Independent, this headline, rare weather phenomenon that led to beasts from the east returning to UK this winter after Arctic freeze. From that report, from the clash of Arctic and North African air masses to the impacts of heavy rain, flooding, and significant snow, the country is experiencing a wide range of conditions. They continue. Regional differences are stark, with some areas facing substantial snow while others enjoy sunny skies and warmth. The outlook remains uncertain. Yes, it's uncertain when the planet's weather systems are being completely disrupted and derailed. Very uncertain. What is certain in this equation is if we continue on the current course of total planetary decimation and global weather warfare, game over soon. Not speculation, statistical certainty. So with all the hyped up headlines on winter weather whiplash, chemical cool downs, what about the following headline this week from InsideClimateNews.org? Texas workers keep dying in the heat. Despite its blazing temperatures, Texas has no labor protections for the heat. That leaves workers unsafe. Yes, it does. Texas has been extraordinarily warm through much of the chemical flash freeze cool downs in other parts of the country. But how many remember the deep freeze in Texas not so long ago, And when it was below zero in Dallas, Texas, it was 33 degrees and raining in the Arctic. How about that? How many people know that? Because Matrix Media definitely doesn't want you to know that. They just want you to focus on how cold, cold, cold it was in Texas, the chemical cold kind, the shallow layer of cold kind, the kind when you go up on an aircraft and they're taking temperature readings out of public view in many of the commercial aircraft now. When you rise up off the ground 1,000 or 2,000 feet, temperatures go up 30 degrees? No, that's not right. That's because of that cold, dense layer, chemically cool layer of air on the ground. That's exactly what this is about. Drought deluge scenarios are hallmarks of climate engineering operations, one extreme or the other. Same is happening with the wind. We have all or nothing scenarios with the wind now. It either doesn't blow frequently or regularly like it used to in some regions, predictable breezes. It's either all or nothing. Hurricane force winds or nothing. From the PhoenixNewTimes.com, Phoenix sees wettest fall on record with week to spare. There's that drought deluge scenario, right? The climate engineers control the spigot, where it rains, how much, and how toxic. From Nature.com, lakes are experiencing more severe heat waves than the atmosphere. It's because water can contain far more thermal energy than air. Cubic meter of seawater can contain 4,000 times the thermal energy of a cubic meter of air. Keep that in mind. The oceans are superheating. That's going to cross over to the atmosphere soon. That doesn't bode well for life on Earth. They say lakes play a crucial role in freshwater ecosystems by providing habitats for diverse aquatic species, regulating local climates, and supporting ecosystems services such as drinking water supply and water for irrigation. However, they are highly vulnerable to extreme heat events. The disintegrating ozone layer, of which climate engineering is the core causal factor, not hairspray cans, is causing a tremendous surface thermal energy buildup. You can feel it when you touch a car window. The interior of cars heat up far faster. We're destroying the planet's atmosphere, and climate engineering is a core part of that. How many people know or understand that our atmosphere is as thin as a layer of paint on a basketball? That puts it into perspective, doesn't it? And without that thin layer, we don't exist. From phys.org, scientists warn mountain climate change is accelerating faster than predicted, putting billions of people at risk. One more headline of, oh my God, it's way worse than we thought. We see it every week now. And how many years? 16 at Geoengineering.org and over 10 more before that. I've tried to sound the alarm that what's unfolding is far worse than anything we're officially being told. And now that's starting to be admitted to, not because these criminally corrupt, power structure bought and paid for institutions want to tell the truth, but because they can no longer hide it. From that report, mountains share characteristics with the Arctic regions and are experiencing similarly rapid changes. This is because both environments are losing snow and ice rapidly and are seeing profound changes in ecosystems. What's less well known is that as you go higher into the mountains, the rate of climate change can be even more intense. It's because, again, you're losing some of the protective layers of the atmosphere. Thermal energy buildup is more intense. Climate engineering raging above all of this, making all of it worse, not better. The report says the implications extend far beyond mountain communities. Over 1 billion people worldwide depend on mountain snow and glaciers for water. Good luck with that for much longer. And all that runoff is toxic anyway. All of it. There's not an uncontaminated drop of rain on planet Earth. Not my opinion. Peer-reviewed science study proven. Nothing, no drop of rain is uncontaminated at this point. They end with this: ice is decreasing more rapidly than we thought. I knew. I've stated so at the top of my lungs for over 2 decades. How could it be that they did not know? Covert weather warfare operations in plain sight and unfolding biosphere collapse from every direction. The worse it gets, the more dogmatic the denial becomes, especially from some that actually claim to be fighting climate engineering. That's a paradox, isn't it? Forgive me. This needs to be said again every week. The never-ending yarns of "it's just jet exhaust" continues from the clan of con artists that claim to be fighting climate engineering while at the same time completely denying climate engineering. Endless deception. Just pollution, they say. If the horizon-to-horizon white lines are not in the stratosphere, then it can't be stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, can it? Translation. If the shocking displays of climate engineering dispersions we constantly see in our skies doesn't fit the denier definitions of climate engineering, then according to them, it can't be climate engineering. The constant use of the chemtrails term, which only harms the credibility of the cause to halt climate engineering, the constant quoting of official narratives of climate engineering denial are what these deniers offer as proof that it's just jet exhaust and condensation and not, they say, patented processes of geoengineering jet aerosol dispersions. So has the "it's just jet exhaust" con artist clan of climate engineering deniers actually taken a NOAA flying lab to altitude with top scientists in it to actually test what the geoengineering jets are spraying? No. Only geoengineeringwatch.org has done that. All on film, all on the record. View the dimming documentary on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for free. Have the "it's just jet exhaust" con artist clan taken a private jet testing platform to even higher altitudes, also with top scientists, to test geoengineering jet dispersions at even higher altitudes? No, again, only geoengineeringwatch.org has done that. So when the "it's just jet exhaust" con artist clan of climate engineering deniers tells you that you're not seeing what you're seeing, when they tell you that X's, ovals, grid patterns, start-stop stripes, transponders turned off on tanker jets, entire horizons covered with a canopy of sprayed climate engineering filth is all just jet exhaust, please use your God-given sense of reason. Review the mountains of indisputable data, film footage, government documents, the list goes on and on and on. All of this presented in the geoengineeringwatch.org groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming. Recognize the "it's just jet exhaust" or just condensation con artist climate engineering denial clan for what they are. A final note about more con artist deceptions. The sites and sources that keep ranting about Bill Gates, for example, being responsible for global climate engineering, or that keeps bringing up the virtually meaningless, media sensationalized geoengineering experiments, mock PR experiments like ScopeX, Make Sunsets, or Stardust, or localized cloud seeding propeller planes, all of it. None of anything that I just mentioned has anything whatsoever to do with the actual ongoing planetary destroying climate engineering weather warfare operations taking place in our skies with intergovernmental cooperation, even between, quote, otherwise adversarial nations. 800-page U.S. Senate document posted at geoengineeringwatch.org proves that. Important sections highlighted. Please do some research. Do some real research. The sources and sites that push and propagate all that I've just covered, all forms of denying, all distracting from what is actually going on in our skies, they then rattle their tin cup for donations. They ask for your money. Criminal con artists and climate engineering cover-up disinformation trolls. All of them. Again, please use your sense of reason and logic. Recognize those that are covertly trying to deny and cover up weather, chemical, and biological warfare in our skies. For over a decade and a half, geoengineeringwatch.org has provided irrefutable proof of what's taking place in our skies. Our compass heading has never changed, ever, because we base all of our conclusions on data, however dire that data may be. On that note, from insects to birds to wildlife, fisheries, forests, and us, all is in sharp decline. Could the now ubiquitous planetary contamination of aluminum nanoparticles have anything to do with that? From AI, this question. Yes, bioavailable aluminum is harmful to all life on Earth, particularly in acidic conditions, which our atmosphere is becoming more acidic, our rain's becoming more acidic because of all the carbon incineration, where it becomes more soluble and toxic to plants, animals, and aquatic life. It can cause direct toxicity by harming organs and the nervous system in humans and animals, and indirectly through environmental damage such as forest die-offs and the reduction of aquatic species. Everything is happening right now at blinding speed in real time. That's not alarmism, it's reality. Here's another constant lie from the so-called climate science community. Aerosol masking effect. That's their term of covertly selling climate engineering, pretending that all this sprayed nanoparticle filth in our skies is somehow cooling the planet. It's a blatant, glaring lie pushed by too many in the so-called climate science community. Those particles, though they can temporarily and toxically deflect some daytime heating, and they can also create the chemically engineered cool downs that we are seeing. Those particles trap more heat than they deflect, and they kill the planet's life support systems. That's not cooling anything. It's fueling a fire. That's what it's doing. Lies on all sides of the fence. A 2023 report from sciencealert.com to be considered. Ozone hole may not be recovering after all. In fact, it might be getting larger. Yes, it most definitely is getting larger, but people believe what they're told. So reports like this have been swept under the rug. In fact, let me continue from this report. The hole in the Antarctic ozone layer has been getting deeper in mid-spring, not smaller, deeper, over the last 2 decades. We didn't hear about that, did we? Again, articles like this swept under the rug. They say, despite a global ban on chemicals that deplete Earth's shield from deadly solar radiation, new research has revealed. What might be happening, the report says, is something else is going on in the atmosphere. Findings reveal the recent large ozone holes may not be caused just by CFCs. What a revelation. How many times have I tried to sound the alarm about that? The hairspray cans are a red herring. And now the so-called climate science community says, oh, gee, there might be a giant elephant in this equation we don't know about. Look up. Climate engineering is destroying the ozone layer. No, it's not getting better. People need to pay attention to their own sense of feel when they touch surfaces that are hotter than hell, and they can feel the skin burning from the sun. Obviously, there's a problem. And just because Matrix Media tells us nothing to see here, it's all better, go back to sleep, we need to pay attention to our God-given senses, do we not? Another from European Geosciences Union, parts of ozone layer not recovering as expected. Imagine that, because there's a lot of recent articles, again, clamoring that it's all getting better, it's all fine, go back to sleep, pay no attention to your senses. About that baseball and softball size hail that's now the norm. From the UK Daily Mail, new natural disaster menace, keyword new here, joins wildfires and hurricanes in driving insurance premiums through the roof across America's heartland. They're actually canceling those premiums. A tiny Nebraska town with less than 4,000 residents, this is an example, was left in ruins after softball-sized hail battered homes, shattered windows, and caused $100 million in damage, an almost unthinkable loss for a community that small. The report continues, the disaster in Cozad, that's the town, is part of a far larger and largely overlooked crisis. Unlike Florida's hurricanes and California's wildfires, hailstorms rarely make national headlines for a reason. They don't want you to know. They typically strike a single town at a time, often without triggering federal disaster aid, and are less deadly than floods and fires. They do more property damage, though. Locals say the Cozad storm, unlike anything they've ever seen, and experts warn it's only going to get worse. Yes, they know, don't they? Because they know climate engineering is not going to be stopped unless we stop it. The report on hail continues, quote, people say that they have PTSD from that storm that hit Cozad. It looked like someone took a machine gun to the side of the houses. But the report says experts warn these monster storms are becoming more frequent, more destructive, and more expensive across the central U.S., and insurers are pulling out. I mentioned that earlier. Hail now causes more home damage dollars nationwide than hurricanes in some years, and it's driving up insurance premiums in the Great Plains to the highest levels in America. Hailstorms caused an estimated $160 billion in damage to homes across the U.S. in 2024 alone. $160 billion. What else are the hailstorms doing besides damaging homes and infrastructure, solar farms, and much more? This is a heartbreaking story for me from KRIS TV. Hailstorms kill 1,800 water birds on Shamrock Island, which reveals climate change patterns. They say, no, it doesn't. It reveals climate engineering and chemical ice nucleation. This is from Corpus Christi, Texas. That's where this took place. A devastating hailstorm that struck Shamrock Island killed 1,800 water birds, creating both an ecological tragedy and an unprecedented research opportunity. That's sick in this sense, as if they shouldn't know climate engineering is the cause. For scientists studying climate impacts on wildlife, the storm killed 1,400 brown pelicans, 1,400, and approximately 30 other bird species, one of the 5 largest water bird colonies in the state. The report then says Dale Golick, the program's endowed chair, said this storm was a rare event because of the size of the hail it produced. It's an unprecedented event. Let's call it what it is. His research of the climate history indicates that storms producing hail larger than 1 inch will become more common in the future. You don't need a crystal ball to predict that, Dale, when you know climate engineering is only being ramped up and the hailstones keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when I looked at the photos of these 1,400 brown pelicans laying dead all over the beaches on this island, it absolutely breaks my heart. I have had such long-term interaction with pelicans. They would sit on the back of my boat when I was completely alone, isolated at the Channel Islands. Off the California coast, they would sit there for very extended periods of time, literally 2 or 3 feet from me. I've had my hands, they put their whole beak around my hand, their leathery beak, trying to get the food that I was giving them, the fish that I would feed them with. And we would stare at each other for such long times. They're such incredible creatures. Do they deserve this? Does the entire web of life deserve this? Not just being brutalized with baseball and softball size hail, but completely ubiquitously contaminated, and we're all going about our lives with fake Christmas trees and football games and pizzas and Coke? What rational person wouldn't or shouldn't feel a righteous sense of rage that everything that's going on here? No one has any future on this course. No one. Not our posterity, not us. It's here. It's kicking in the front door now. If we don't collectively face what's taking place and the psychotic criminals behind it, we're done. Simple. About failure from EnviroNewsNigeria.com. COP30, the climate conference in Brazil, quote, a profound failure, a festival of false solutions. Yes, that's exactly what it is. I've said this over and over about the COP climate conferences. It's all a facade. Behind closed doors, they're forcing countries to actively or passively participate in the climate engineering insanity. The rest is simply circus. That's it. From France 24, scientifically, COP30 has been nothing less than a failure. Drill, baby, drill. That will save us all from ourselves, right? That'll fix everything. On that note, this from numerous sources: Trump announces new offshore drilling projects despite bipartisan pushback. Pedal to the metal, full throttle of total loot, plunder, pillage, and pollute till nothing is left, destruction until the moment of impact. From OutdoorLife.com, the EPA is gutting the Clean Water Act, which has protected fish and game for 53 years. That sounds like making America healthy again, doesn't it? The Environmental Protection Agency announced changes to the Clean Water Act that sportsmen's organizations say could set us back 50 years to a time when rivers lit on fire and fish went belly up. That's all happening right now anyway, and they're going to make it worse. We're really talking about a huge loss of basic pollution and destruction protections, the report says, for the vast majority of the nation's wetlands and streams. So, the report states, there will be fewer places to fish or to hunt, and the places that are left to fish and to hunt, you will have to worry about what you will be eating. Yes, you should worry, because based on peer-reviewed study already of 500 locations in the U.S., with wild-caught fish already, every single one was toxic. And now they're going to make it far worse still. They're gutting whatever protection was there. What a great idea. That's definitely a Maha principle. Is it really? Make America healthy again? Let's take the red dye out of Fruit Loops and gut the Clean Water Act at the same time. About those 500 wild-caught fish I just mentioned, all of them toxic, the report, the science study report, gave this conclusion that eating one of those wild-caught fish was equivalent to drinking a month's worth of toxic water. Make America healthy again. Right. Make America great again. Right. That how we do it? The rule change would also threaten drinking water, the report says. Of course it will. From theconversation.com, let's add this. Forever chemicals contaminate more dolphins and whales than we thought. Worse than we thought. Of course, all this runoff is heading in where? The ocean, of course. And God knows what's being dumped from ships in the ocean. And I'm not blaming just America, not at all. But we outsource much of our pollution, don't we, to make us look better? We just have other countries do it for us. And they're all bad. It's just a matter of scale. Who consumes most in the U.S.? Not hard to answer that question. U.S. population, with about 4% of the total global population, consumes about 25% of the world's resources. How long can that continue? Not much longer. Wait and see. Let's add this from TRTworld.com. U.S. plans massive expansion of oil drilling in waters off Alaska, California, and Florida. Under a proposal announced by the Department of the Interior, 34 lease sales will be offered, allowing for drilling across almost 1.3 billion acres, an area roughly the size of the Amazon. How about that? The plan includes waters off Alaska's northern coast that have never been drilled before, areas in the Gulf of Mexico. It's dead anyway. Guess that doesn't matter, which the administration calls the Gulf of America. This is a clown show. Department of War, Gulf of America, it's all a clown show with a cast of characters that literally looks like something from a Marvel comic book strip, literally. And for those that jump up and down and say, well, you must love Biden, then no, stop the moronic. It's moronic, this dichotomous thinking. Biden, who kept falling down airline stair ramps and falling over on his bike, didn't know what planet he's on. No, this is all part of the theater. It's not about political stripes. It never has been. That's a divide and conquer strategy. Wake up. We are all passengers on the planetary Titanic. There's no place to hide. Get on deck and make your voice heard while you still can. Let's keep going. I'm almost out of time on this broadcast. From the UK Guardian, thousands of toxic sites across the U.S. face risk of coastal flooding. Study finds rising seas might flood facilities handling waste, sewage, and oil and gas. And coastal states are most at risk. Well, that's a little obvious, isn't it? Bottom line is, from every direction, so few have any true understanding of how dire and immediate our collective scenario is when the store shelves empty out, when there's nothing you can eat that isn't toxic and tainted completely. That's when the carbon fuel carnival consequences hit home. It's about to happen. How many of those toxic sites are they coastally? Nationwide? 5,500. Not just a few. 5,500. And about Earth's dying oceans, and they are dying rapidly. Gulf of Mexico is a prime example. From ScienceDaily.com, record sargassum seaweed piles trap sea turtle hatchlings on Florida beaches. From that report, sargassum seaweed is creating a major new obstacle for sea turtle hatchlings, drastically slowing their crawl to the ocean and increasing their risk from predators and heat. Sargassum is piling up on beaches all over the Caribbean. Again, Florida ocean temperatures already recorded previously at 102 degrees. Nothing can live in that. Nothing. And again, a cubic meter of seawater contains 4,000 times the thermal energy of a cubic meter of air. These are incredibly dire harbingers of what's coming that can't just be turned off. The single greatest leap we could collectively make in the right direction is to expose and halt the weather warfare in our skies. And speaking of weather warfare, here's an update on a primary victim for the last 40 years that we know of. Iran has been the victim of NATO Western Empire weather warfare for 40 years. Been stated on the record on the floor of the UN, but far too many Americans don't seem to care about that. They only choose to believe what they want to believe, what's fed to them by matrix media about who's good, who's bad, who's done what to who, and they ignore things like this. Headline, Iran's capital is moving. The reason is an ecological catastrophe. The decision to move Iran's capital is partly driven by climate change, but experts say decades of human error and actions are also to blame. No. What's to blame here, by far, the most is climate engineering cutting off their precipitation. They're doing the same thing to the U.S. Southwest. Same thing. 40 million Americans are facing immense water shortages on the very near-term horizon, and that's a direct result of climate engineering. So does our government. Actually, those who run our government, those who truly control levers of power, the money printers who control militaries, thus they control every elected official, no matter how high the office, they control matrix media. Does anyone think that they care about Americans any more than they do the Iranians? No, they don't. So when Phoenix runs out of water, when the U.S. Southwest runs out of water, will that be the time to wake up and realize what's being done to us by those who truly control power, those who don't care at all about any specific country or people? Not at all. They care about power and control, period. Here's a couple more countries to add to the list, and there are many, many more. From Shafak.com, over half of Iraq now at risk of desertification, ministry warns. How about England? They're one of our friends, right? Not so much. Not for those who print the money. From the UK Guardian, England facing drastic measures due to extreme drought. And lest I forget, as I've mentioned so many times on so many broadcasts, it cannot rain less overall on a rapidly warming planet unless there's a factor we're not being told about. That factor is climate engineering. Atmosphere holds 7% more moisture for every degree C of warming. Based on unfiltered data, we're likely past 3.5C now. And no, I'm not an Al Gore fan. No, I'm not an AOC fan. No, I don't like any of the environmental groups. None of them. They're all cowards. None of them willing to admit to the climate engineering elephant in this equation. And it is climate engineering that has totally disrupted the planet's hydrological cycle and contaminated every single drop of rain, every breath we take, every bite of food, everything. Climate engineering operations that so many are criminally denying from all sides of the fence, as I've pointed out again and again and again. We are the ones we've been waiting for. If there's anything that's going to change in time to make any difference whatsoever, it's up to all of us, to start spot fires of awareness with credible data from a credible source. Ask those around us that wake up to do the same. We must force the climate engineering issue to the full light of day in the very near term, or we are done. If we can force it to the full light of day, we would cause a shockwave around the world. We would overturn the current paradigm, the proverbial pitchforks and torches moment, as populations all over the world realize what their governments have done to them without their knowledge or their consent, subjected them to an experiment from which there is no return. If you are willing to help us in this battle, please check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for very specific instructions on how you can help to move this fight forward. Please, please, make your voice heard. Make every single day count. We are rapidly running out of time. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org.